It's just dark, man. Dark times that are not.
It's dark times, but we'll get through it. It'll pass.
I hope so.
So the thing that irritates me, that I'm struggling with a lot, and I hesitate to speak of this, but there's some movies that I think you should see in your lifetime. Two of them in particular. I think you should see Schindler's List.
I knew you were gonna say it. I knew it.
And I never want to see that movie again, but I would watch it with you because it's that important. I want to be there when you watch it. And I want to help you unpack it and process it. And there's a couple scenes that are going to break your heart, but it's real.
Isn't that Liam Neeson or somebody? Like,
yeah, it's real. It's history. It's important to see. And then Saving Private Ryan is another one.
Seen it. Great.
Oh, my God.
The opening scene is like...
And I
like
had the privilege of
seen.
talking to people that went on to Normandy and were there and said that is exactly what it was like.
Wow.
And so my metaphor, if you haven't seen those two movies, if you're a young person, you haven't seen those two movies, I encourage you to watch it, but don't watch them alone. They're really rough, partially because they're true stories and they show the awfulness of humanity in a real form. But in my head, the people that stormed Normandy, that went off those boats and ran into those beaches with bullets flying, were heroes.
On either side, honestly, like...
Well, the Germans, maybe. I don't know. They're trying to take over the world. They were the villains,
Fair
in my
enough.
opinion.
But I just think it's horrifying. To be on the beach on either side is just terrifying to me. Like,
well, I would rather be shooting at the people coming out of the boat. But
I think the ignorance of that statement, saying like both sides, but can you imagine either side? Like,
it's horrifying.
I guess that's my point. It's like the horrifying nature of
war.
Either side
war
of war.
Horrifying.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but I think they're heroes, and they had the equipment they needed.
Mm.
They had helmets, which may or may not have stopped bullets, but it stopped some. They had guns. They had lots of bullets themselves, and they stormed the beach. And there's that one scene, since you've seen it, it's a brutal scene where the guy gets a glancing blow of a bullet on his helmet, and he's horrified, and he takes his helmet off and looks at it, and then he gets shot in the head because he took off his stupid helmet. I mean, it's just brutal.
Yeah.
But they had their equipment, and I think them as heroes. And I think if I was married to someone in the military, I would count the cost and say, okay, you might die in a war. That's the deal. If I was married to a police officer, if I had a husband or a wife who was a police officer, I would know, hey, cops sometimes don't come home. It's a brutal thing. A great respect for that. My dad was a police officer, and I would accept that, okay, this is part of the deal. I don't know that medical professionals are in that same category in my head.
They don't sign up for maybe when I go to work, I might die.
I don't think so.
No, and I don't think their spouses sign up for that.
I surely didn't.
Yeah.
And
because your wife's a nurse, to be clear. Like,
nurse practitioner. She's not just a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner. She's really badass. And it's hard for me that we're sending the medical profession, we're telling them to get off the boat and storm Normandy without a helmet and a gun with one bullet.
You don't have the tools you need.
They don't have protective gear.
Yeah.
I know people that are being given a single-use gown, a single-use mask, a single-use goggles, single-use hood thing that you're supposed to use one time, and said, this is what you get for the next few months. You're supposed to use it once. Now, the reason there's no equipment, as far as I can tell, is the CEOs of hospitals and medical providers and institutions said, oh, we used to stockpile and we'll save money, and not. So I don't think the burden is on the medical professionals to codependently enable the dysfunction, say, well, that guy screwed up, but I'm going to go and storm Normandy without the equipment I need.
The motherfuckers making financial decisions at the top. I mean, it's kind of like I'm watching the TV show Deputy, and the wife has none of the. The wife is a doctor in the show.
That's a great show. I love that show.
Yeah, and the wife is like thinking of quitting her job because the hospital she's at isn't financially given the resources they need. And she's been asked to fire people. Her hands are tied all the time because the hospitals run financial as a business rather than as an institution to help people.
Right.
And that's how all hospitals are, sadly.
And this is where it gets tough for me because I have respect for people that put their lives on the line and go into tough things and do the situation. But if you know you're going to die or you might die and you're risking your life because you don't have the equipment you need, I'm not a big fan of suicide. The reason I'm not a fan of suicide is because the people that commit suicide, there's people like you and I who are left.
Yeah.
And, I heard the story of this doctor who has 2 young children and a spouse and knows that they might get coronavirus, so they're going to rent an Airbnb and not go home at night and stay at a separate place to care for strangers. And in the post, they might die because they don't have the protective gear they need. And everyone was saying, what a hero. And I was thinking, what about your 2 kids, your 2 young kids? What about your spouse?
Are you really a hero if you're abandoning your family?
So being a survivor of suicide, being someone that was left.
Your son killed himself. My brother killed himself.
And we're left. Zane died. He committed suicide, and we're still here. Or people that like it, whatever they say, death by suicide. I'm sorry.
Whatever the politically correct thing is, we get in trouble. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't
Zane
care.
died, right? And he killed himself.
And we're left. So those 2 kids, you're saying the strangers that you're going to care for are more important than your 2 kids and your spouse. And I have the weird perspective, know what it's like to be left behind when someone makes a bad choice. Now, if those doctors had all the protective gear and they put it on, care for one person, tear it off, put on the next, I think it's noble, and at least they've got a fighting chance not to get it.
But if you get blood on your apron, that's a single-use thing, and you got to use it again for the next guy. And one of the big problems you've probably heard is ventilators. It's a tube you shove down someone's throat and it breathes for them. Yeah.
And the problem they have in Italy is 3 people walk into the hospital, an 80-year-old, an 80-year-old, a 50-year-old. They're all about to die. You only have 1 ventilator. So they put the 50-year-old on the ventilator and they put the 2 80-year-olds in the hall to die. And in a few hours, 80-year-olds are dead. And that's horrible choices people are having to make. But when you shove the tube down their throat, you aerosolize the virus. The virus goes into the air because it's not easy to shove a tube down someone's throat. And if you don't have protective gear, you're really risking your life or risking your health, let alone
risking getting sick of the same virus.
Yes, and then taking it home to your family. And so I would say, hey, if you have the protective gear, wow, it's noble that you're willing to do that. Count the cost. But hey, when they don't even have the protective gear and they do it anyways, it's just painful for me because it seems like madness. And I would not want my parents to do that. If I was those young kids, I'd be like, no, Mom, or no, Dad, I don't want you. And everyone says, well, who's going to care for those people? I don't know. I don't know who's going to care for them, but it's very painful to me. And I'm sorry they're put in that situation, but maybe the guy or gal that made the decision not to take the equipment should be put on trial for murder. I don't know.
That's what's infuriating is it really reminds me of when the stock market crashed years ago, right? And the people at the top making the decisions didn't get in trouble, didn't go to jail, nothing happened to them, and the people below them are the people that got fucked. Yep. The country got fucked. And if I may for a minute, it's really irritating that the people that made the decision did not. What's sad, I think, is that we're not going to see change. I hope so. I fucking hope the medical system completely gets overhauled from this, but I don't think it will. And that's what's frustrating and sad is that the people at the top will continue to make the same decision that they made months ago that got us into this situation in the first place.
Well, and the medical community, there's a big martyr syndrome in it. It's noble to work 10 hours instead of 8. It's noble to put in your extra time. It's noble to serve. And they've got this whole martyr system where they have dysfunctional work environments and they accept it as okay because that's how medicine is. And it's like, no, it shouldn't be that way. Years ago, I had a friend that discovered that pastors were often workaholics and they would work 60, 80 hours a week. So he complained to his boss and his boss said, well, that's how it is. And it's okay that that's how it is. And he's like, no, that's not okay. If that's not healthy.
Well, it's kind of like I know someone who works at a zoo and they're so torn and heartbroken because on one hand, they love their animals but they also realize that it's kind of fucked up. Like the zoo is kind of awful. Like you have elephants that want to roam miles a day in Africa that are in Portland at the zoo fucking stuck and can't go anywhere. They literally have like a tiny little pen. That's not good for an elephant, but you can't put them back. And it's like catch-22 that never ends. You're like, well, shit. Like I want to help the elephants. I want to work with them. I want to do this. But also, it's terrible. Like your hands are tied. You're like, I don't know what to do. I didn't make this decision. I didn't choose this, but I'm stuck with it. And do you quit your job because in protest? But you're just going to replace you with someone else.
Well, but then at least that doctor wouldn't die, and the doctor's kids and spouse wouldn't
I'm
lose
talking
him.
about the zoo.
Yeah.
It's different because if you go work for the elephants, you fucking might die. That's it's like
So it's every time I see all of the doctors in Italy who are dying, doctors and nurses who are dying, it just breaks my heart. And again, if they had the protective gear, I would feel better about it, but they just don't, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's sad. You hear about. I don't know. I don't want to talk about Jeff Bezos and stuff, but it's like he's like. Did you hear that? See how he was like asking for people to donate to some fund to help Amazon workers? It's like, dude, what the fuck? Like, so out of touch with how much money he makes, and he's asking for the public to donate money. It's like it was just weird. I didn't.
So Columbia Sportswear has their stores closed.
Yeah.
Got an email today. They're going to keep their stores closed, I think, through, I don't know, April 10th or April 15th or something, and they're going to continue to pay their employees. Now, at some point, they won't be able to.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're even trying, wow, how awesome is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get it, and not every company can do that.
Yeah.
There's a big company in Portland that laid off everybody and now is asking people, hey, hold your checks. We're trying to get the money together for you to make the checks because they just, particularly in the restaurant business, you just don't make very much money. And so I don't fault
you're almost like at living paycheck to paycheck if you're in a restaurant.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And so as business, you're paycheck to paycheck. And so I don't fault the people that can't, but boy, it sure is cool when a company says, hey, we can, and we're going to.